Alright, what's going on my broskiis? My name is Toadskii back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and making this video right before the Sugo-Fest goes live, of course. The Sugo-Fest goes live tomorrow, or actually within the same day, depending on where you're watching this video, but either way, I wanted to make this video to talk about the actual Sugo-Fest in and of itself, talking about the debuting characters, which part they're going to be appearing on, and which part is the overall best, because I do know that, a lot of people are still going to pull on this banner, despite the fact that, we already know what's coming up, we already know when the big banners are going to be dropping, but still, a lot of people are going to be pulling on this banner, and hopefully give you guys a bit of insight as to what I think is the best part of the Sugo-Fest. So I guess without further ado, let's jump into it. I actually did create this own infographic if you guys want it. I know a lot of people wanted the infographic from my timeline video. It's down below in the pinned comments for that video, and it will also be down below in the pinned comments for this video if you guys want this specific infographic. So anyways, let's jump into it. Part 1 is debuting the 22nd of July, 1900 PST time, of course. Now, for Part 1 of the Sugo-Fest, it's a 10% red rate, and there are 30 available legends. Meaning, if all characters have the same rate, that each individual unit is going to have a 0.33% chance. I believe that's correct. If I am wrong, obviously, then that sucks, but either way, that should be correct. Now, having a look at what characters are actually available here, obviously, you got the 3 new guys. Everyone wants to get their hands on those guys. Well, you got Blackbeard, who's just kind of doing his own thing, but what else do you have here? You've also got versus Ace and Akainu, this super type Kaido who I use a lot. He is ridiculously good. Probably one of my favorite legends in the game right now. Super type Zoro is obviously ridiculously good. Versus Big Mom Kaido, Germa 66, who should be getting their 6+ in October for Global, so look out for that one. We've also got the Sweet Commanders, Luffy and Sanji. You've got Hawkins and Kid, who, I mean, honestly, you don't really need these guys too much. If you get Zoro, these guys are kind of irrelevant. Hawkins doesn't see that much play. He's okay in like the 10-star difficulty Garp challenges, and in Kid's okay, actually. He's good for Kizuna Clash, should I say. He's very good for Kizuna Clash. You got super type Katakuri, which not a lot of people like, but again, in Kizuna Clash, really good if you got to go up against a side boss. This Rayleigh is a little bit underrated, doesn't see much play though, but can be useful. Not very useful if you're a newer player in the game. Mihawk Perona is fine, very useful actually. Shanks Crew, obviously one of the best legends in the game. Sangora is still ridiculously good as a crewmate. You've got Viva Rebecca, who's still one of the better subs in the game. You've got Carrot, who's okay, Shiki's not too bad, and then you get to those lower tier characters which aren't very useful. I do want to pay attention though to Lucy, because with his 6+ and limit break expansion on top of it, honestly one of the better legends in the game. With his expansion, which is not currently out on Global, he becomes a 4.5 captain to Strength, Dex, and Quick. He's got a great special ability. Just overall, this Lucy is very good. So if you don't have him and you eventually pull him, like, be very happy that you get him, because he's very powerful to have. Very useful special. V2 Shanks, shout out to him. He's still a pretty solid unit overall. But the rest of them, probably not so much. I mean, Nami still sees a little bit of play as well. I mean, Sanji did recently get his 6+, but not the best unit to have. But this Nami's still pretty solid, especially after super evolving, getting access to paralysis reduction with her special, and the crewmate ability, gets rid of burn as well with her special. So this unit is pretty good, but, just looking at Part 1 though, you do have to, obviously take into consideration the fact that there are 30 available legends with 0.33% chance. So realistically, this is the part that you would want to pull on if you don't have a lot of these Sugo-Fest exclusives. I would say if you don't own a single character in the top row, this is probably a pretty good Sugo-Fest to pull on, because like all the characters in the top row are relatively usable in some way, shape, or form. Obviously the big highlights there, Luffy and Sanji is still very good. I think Germa is severely underrated by the community. We've got versus Big Mom Kaido. Zoro's okay. Kaido's one of my favorites. Versus Ace and Akainu, arguably the best legend in the game. And then Magellan and Moria are fantastic legends. Blackbeard is usable, but not obviously everyone's favorite. But Part 1 is the only part I would pull on, like, honestly, is if you don't have a lot of the available characters in the banner. If you already own a vast majority of these characters, especially the ones in the top row, you'd probably want to be avoiding this one. So now that we've talked about Part 1, let's talk about Part 2 of the Sugo-Fest, which debuts on the 29th of July, and then you got the Part 3 and also Part 4, all debut on the 29th of July. So for Part 2 of this banner, this is where Blackbeard is the headliner unit. You got Blackbeard, of course, which, everyone has their opinions on that guy. Then you've got Super Type Zoro. You also have Halloween Mihawk, who is still very good. Luffy and Sanji are very nice to have. Smoker, outside of his support effect, aren't super useful. You'll use him in bits here and there, but unfortunately his captain effect is much to be desired. Super type Katakuri, as we kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, very good in Kizuna clashes. Outside of that, you won't use him too much. Super type Sabo is okay against Dex content. Outside of that, no, he's pretty bad. You got the V3 Rayleigh, who is kind of niche in his usage, but still, I'm a big fan of this unit. I use him sometimes, and when you do use him in the right cases, he's ridiculously good. Halloween Ace, very good support, good special ability, and his captain effect eventually, once we do get the expansion for it, makes him insanely good. And then obviously Kaido still sees a lot of play in today's day and age. Powerhouse striker teams, just clearing content, easy content as quick as you possibly can. V1 Vivi Rebecca, still a very good unit, one of the best subs in the game. V2 Zoro, he's okay I suppose with his 6+, but I mean, there's definitely much better legends you would prefer to pull. Capone with his 6+ is still pretty usable as well. Good with versus Ace, good with versus Akainu on both sides of the equation there. So that's a pretty nice unit to get, I guess. But I mean, you'd rather pull just Ace versus Akainu himself rather than just have a Capone unit to use with him. This Nami we kind of touched up on earlier is still pretty good. V2 Shanks I'm a big fan of still. Great special ability, still is kind of useful in a lot of content. Then you got this V2 Boa who's pretty bad. Shirahoshi isn't very useful. I mean, she does change all orbs including block, I believe. I think she goes through block into rainbow. So that's kind of nice, but again, it's not like you'd waste a full crew spot for a unit that just does that. Unless if you're running some very weird team. Hody Jones not used too much these days. V1 Fujitora not used much either. And neither is Mihawk. So for this banner in particular, I feel like it's like there's no real one unit that stands out as like, yes, this is the reason why you should pull on this banner. Aside from like maybe V1 Kaido, but he's a really old unit at this point. And like maybe Luffy Sanji. Super type Zoro is nice. Halloween Mihawk's nice. But I mean like outside of that, there isn't really much going on here. Again, like the only reason you should probably pull on this part specifically is if you don't own a lot of the ones that are here only. I mean, if you have like all the ones in part 3 and part 4, then yeah, I guess part 2 kind of makes sense. But I think just looking at it on paper, part 2 is just kind of a weak part in this Sugo-Fest. You got a couple of good units here and there that have some niche usages, of course. I think Viva Rebecca is still a really nice unit. As I mentioned, Halloween Ace is still kind of nice. But I mean, like as I said, overall, in the grand scheme of things, this is a pretty weak part for the Sugo-Fest. And now we move on to part 3 of the Sugo-Fest, which is the one where Moria is going to be the featured unit. Now for this one looks a little bit more promising because obviously Moria is more of a desirable unit compared to Blackbeard, but it also comes along with Super type Kaido, who as I said is one of the better units that I've used as of late. Halloween Law is still a really good unit still. You've got the Sweet Commanders, who's still pretty solid, great support effect as well. You got the 2 Dex units in Hawkins and Kid. Super type Luffy is still a legit one of the better units in the game as well. You can't disregard how good he is. The Arlong crew unfortunately is not as powerful, but you know, has some niche usage. Of course, is still a rainbow boosting attack unit with his special, but you know, his captain effect is pretty bad. His switch effect, in my opinion, isn't very good either. But, you know, it's fine. He's still a nice unit to own. Pudding and Sangora are still very good subs. You've got Bullet, who still will see a lot of play moving forward. Obviously, whenever they release a powerful strength, quick, or int character, Bullet can abuse it. So that's really nice to see. You've got Sabo Koala, V2 Sanji, even V2 Akainu is still not a terrible unit in my eyes. And then you got some of the weaker ones down the bottom. Jinbei still, you know, not too bad with his 6+ with a decent utility special. Crocodile's not so good. Cavendish, okay support. But honestly, this one, like just comparing the 2 parts, I definitely prefer part 3 in general, because I feel like some of these units are definitely a lot better captains and characters that you may use a lot more often comparing to part 2. You know, you've got this one with Kaido, who still sees a lot of play, but I mean, outside of that, there's not too many units you're like, yeah, I see that unit used as a captain all the time. Whereas with this one, you know, you got Law, you got Kaido, Mori's going to see a lot of play, of course, sometimes Kid, Snake Man's still really good, Sangoro, not as much as a captain, but one of the better subs in the game, especially for attack boosting or manipulation. He's a Sanji unit who's got okay supports. Sabo Koala are still very good as subs, not too much as captains anymore. V2 Akainu is really great for int teams for orb boosting and stuff. I mean, Law basically does that as well. And then Bullet, of course. So, like, I do think that part 3 is slightly better than part 2 for just the available characters. And remember, that's more of, like, if you're more of a newer player in the game, figuring out which part is the best one to pull on. I do think part 3 is slightly better than part 2, but we still got one more part to have a look at. And now the final part of the Sugo-Fest that we have to have a look at is part 4, which is going to be the Magellan-themed part. And I mean, like, just having a look at like the top row of characters, how can you not say this is the best boosted part, right? You've got Magellan, who, you know, he has a great unit. He's probably, in terms of on paper, his captain effect, I think, is probably the best quick super type captain effect. A lot of people will still like the Kaido stuff, and Kaido is still very, very good. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Kaido is bad by any sense, but I feel like Magellan is more of the defensive type unit who will help you get through a little bit more difficult content because he's got healing mechanics, he gets rid of paralysis as a captain, he's got great multipliers, like everything about his captain effect is great. He's got a pretty average super type in my opinion, but his special ability with double special activation is godly. He has a great crewmate effect to reduce his cooldown every time another quick unit, I think, uses a special. And in PvP, you can't go past how good he is in PvP, especially with the dude right next to him with Ace versus Akainu. So for those of you who are unlucky enough not to pull him recently from his debut or treasure map or from tickets, then you get another opportunity to potentially pull him here on part 4. And then right next to that, you've got Kaido versus Big Mom, who are still one of the better units in the game. Then you've got Halloween Shanks, unfortunately dips down a little bit there, not too great. But then you got Germa, very underrated. Sugar, also pretty good. You got Mihawk Perona, who have accessibility to their amazing conditional boost. You've got Shanks crew, which in my opinion is still one of the top 5 best units in the game. I use them all the time, so good. Quickbeard is still okay, good support by the way. Mancheri, Shirahoshi V1, not the V2. I do think V2 is way more valuable, but V1 is still okay here and there. Luffy Law I've been using a lot as crewmates recently on cerebral teams, fighter teams, and also just type teams as well. Like, they're not too bad as crewmates, you know, 2.5 orb boost is not a terrible thing. You've got Karaka here as well, who has a great limit break expansion, great special ability, Carrot for speed teams, and then Shiki's not too great, but you got Tesoro as well, who has a really good support. Baccarat with this support is godly for those int garp challenges. You got V2 Rayleigh, who's just okay. Lucy, who we've talked about a little bit earlier on in this video. Sanji, who has an okay support that uses sometimes, but not a great unit overall. Doflamingo, one of the best PvP units in the game, still has a pretty good set of skills as well. And then you got Marco, who doesn't see that much play anymore, but still is an okay unit. I just think overall part 4 is by far and away the best part of the Sugo-Fest, honestly. And it really comes down to, once again, what characters are you missing on your character box, and which individual unit from this Sugo-Fest do you prefer to go for? Do you like the Blackbeard? Do you like the Moria? Do you like the Magellan? But remember, you know, you do have part 1 here, and if you are just looking just for the new characters, right, there is a higher chance that you'll pull one of the new units on part 1 compared to part 2 and 3 and 4 if they all have equal rates, because 3 of these units together will equate to 1%, whereas on each of their parts they equate to 0.5%. But of course, each one of these units on part 1, if equated rates, is going to be 0.33. So it really depends on what you really want to do. As I said, I think it is more valuable to look at your character box and determine which characters you're missing, which ones you want the most. But I mean, on paper, you can't go past part 4. That is the best part by far, and probably the part that most people should be pulling for, in my opinion. But again, it is up to you at the end of the day. So I really do hope that this video gave you that insight as to how you should be expecting to go in this Sugo-Fest. I wish you guys the best of luck on pulling if you guys decide to pull, and of course I also will be pulling on this Sugo-Fest. Make sure to go down below in the video description where my twitch.tv/Toadskii link is there, so make sure to come over to the stream. We will be pulling as soon as the Sugo-Fest goes live for part 1. We'll be doing a handful of multis, hopefully trying to pull some of these brand new Sugo-Fest exclusive characters. So hopefully you enjoyed this video today, and if you guys did, make sure to leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content that I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. But other than that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.